At the time of recording, the Storm Prediction Center has issued a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk for portions of Oklahoma and Texas, particularly right around the Red River region. This includes Wichita Falls, cities you can see on the map here, as well as a surrounding 3 out of 5 enhanced risk. That's going to include Oklahoma City Metro, a lot of northern Texas and the northern Panhandle, and Dallas-Fort Worth area also under the gun here, Texarkana, Amarillo, and Lubbock also in this enhanced risk. And then we look at a large slight risk here, but also an accompanied kind of localized tornado environment out here, basically in the DC area, where they don't typically get tornadoes, being in Virginia, portions of Maryland as well. So we're really looking at the synoptic overview of this. Again, we are still a day out at the time of recording, but this will be applicable to the morning. And model runs don't change up that drastically. And currently we have, again, that level 4 out of 5 moderate risk. This is a wind-driven moderate risk. So notice we have this 45% hatched contour here. Significant winds being the primary threat, followed by a large hail. Again, very much in this large hatched region here. Oklahoma City and that metro region still being in that as well. And then we do have this accompanied 5% tornado risk for this Texas and Oklahoma area. But again, we do have that 5% out for regions of here as well. Looking at the synoptic overview of this right now. So first I want to start with our satellite. Currently, it's nighttime. It's 10:20 p.m. Eastern here, and we do have it's nighttime. We have our infrared imagery up right now. Pretty quiet across a good portion of the U.S. Again, for our day one outlook, we did have this slight risk, but most of that threat has now diminished. For the most part, our main squall line is now gone. And that has led to basically, again, pretty quiet. But this will be leading to a remnant MCV. That's called a mesoscale convective vortex, which is essentially when storms themselves produce their own kind of low pressure system. And that's currently ongoing up here, right in this region. You can see we do have a little bit of, some convection going on, some cloud cover from these storms earlier in the day. Still continuing out here. Not very impressive, but we do have an MCV forecast to form over here for tomorrow. We'll go more in depth into that one, looking at our risk for Virginia. Let's look at our water vapor as well, see for what our general pattern looks like here. And we do have a general troughing feature up here, but we still have this ridging that we've seen for a while. I'm looking at our model run here. Here's our 21Z initialization, so a little bit outdated. Not too far though. This is the most recent run we have. It'll go out to day 2. Looking at this again, we have this high pressure system down here. This has been pretty consistent for the past few days. It's been leading to a lot of instability in this vicinity right here, kind of including New Mexico and Oklahoma, Texas. We've seen a lot of storms there for a few days here. For tomorrow, we will be seeing this large scale troughing feature that we looked at, but still that ridging pattern as well. So you end up with something a bit more of a kind of a northwest flow event, where you get flow out of the northwest. We often see these more so in the Midwest. On these kind of setups where you end up with a, again, very similar to this, we get this strong northwesterly flow. That's not as much of the case down here. We will get a little bit of that enhanced flow towards the nighttime, but for the most part, we don't have that large scale troughing feature that is typical up there in the Midwest. But the idea still remains the same. We have flow out of the northwest, and that's going to lead to stronger winds probabilities, if anything. The main reason synoptically this event will be going on is because of a shortwave trough. Let's move down here to our southern Great Plains sector. You'll notice we have this very clear shift in the wind. Some winds here out of the north, and then a very clear shift down to the basically westerly winds, and then southwesterly winds here. This kind of indicates a very strong and potent, not very strong because you can't see it extremely well, but a clear shortwave trough there. You can see it a little bit better if we go more here as well. Again, we have those kinks in the contour lines here. That's going to be our primary factor in storm production. And one main factor I want to look at also, let's actually check our low-level jet. We don't have an intense low-level jet with this system either. A lot of this has to do with just how moist it is at the surface. And this is really where you can see this threat prevail. Looking at our lead up to this is basically tonight. Morning of the event, we have a pretty wide range of moisture here. 70s dew points being outlined by the purple here. That's like good moisture getting pretty far up into Oklahoma, about halfway up the state. Winds here are out of the south because of our ridging pattern going on. That's going to lead to this warm air advection going on. And watch our moistures here. Dew points just really get up there towards Kansas. We get a very clear border up here. Basically, kind of a classic open warm sector look, but we don't have a strong surface low to accompany this. We do have a southerly winds, but we will get plenty of convergence along the boundaries there. We get mass convergence here, especially in Oklahoma. You can see those colors really lighting up there. And then also over here, kind of in the Texan panhandle as well. We do see a lot of that convergence due to our winds. Just again, we have strong northerlies up here, and the southerlies are aiding and helping that moisture get up there. So I have a lot of convergence in this region, and we should end up with a lot of updrafts. Looking at instability here, you'll notice it is very intense. This is our CAPE measure of instability, and notice the really bright colors. The cap breaks extremely quickly here. Very high amount of CAPE being forecast over Oklahoma. That's over 6,000. That's higher than this chart gets to. That's surface-based CAPE on the wraparound. A lot of instability will be in place for tomorrow. A little of instability here. If you look at 3 CAPE, not super impressive. We do have some pockets of more impressive 3 CAPE, and that's more for a tornado threat. We don't have, it's not as widespread as you'd expect. And again, surface-based CAPE definitely more maximized up in Oklahoma. Most unstable CAPE, again, we can look at this for possibly looking at hail production, more elevated convection. But either way, there's a lot of instability to be had, and that will always lead to hail being a threat as well. Now let's look at our cams. I want to see the HRRR and see how this handles our reflectivity. Let's look at how our storms move on throughout the day. So we get a lot of this storm activity because of that convergence storm remaining, but not super intense, right until after lunchtime. This is 1 p.m. Central Time here, 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m. We do get a lot of this storm coverage, especially up there where we had much of that convergence being maximized. Then notice very quickly here, just a huge uptick in storm coverage overall. Watch back in here as this whole line conglomerates and really punches forward into this really intense Boeing line segment, which eventually moves off into basically northern Louisiana near the Mississippi border. Still kind of remains out here into the day after as well, but definitely diminishes in intensity. Let's look at our forecast winds. Looking at wind gusts here. Notice again where our wind gusts are most maximized by those really deep purples, bright reds, and even the yellows. Yellows being over 65 knots. So really intense punches here. If you hover over some of these regions here, that's about 70 knots forecast max wind gust. That's over 80 miles an hour. That's incredible intensity. That's more than an EF. It's basically an EF0 nearing an EF1 intensity, and that's just from straight line winds. And one thing I want to mention with this also is we looked at, and we've seen the reflectivity here and the way this Boeing line looks. So how does our tornado threat kind of compare to this? So the main way I look at tornado threat in a line segment is going to be where are our surface winds coming out of. If you imagine we have this Boeing line segment, we imagine our Boeing line segment is right here, right? We had on the reflectivity a second ago. That means your winds are coming out of this region. They're straight line winds. That's the direction they're coming from. Ideally, if you want to, not ideally, but for maximal tornado coverage, you're going to have winds going basically right towards that line, so that whenever you do get a kink, you're going to get that rotation and spin vorticity along the line, and that is where we get tornadoes being most maximized. So our Boeing line segment is mainly, again, we should have winds coming out of the northwest. This is a northwest flow event that would be expected. Let's look at our surface winds. Some of these surface winds are definitely out of the southeast here. Other ones tend to be more out of the south. So we do have this line segment, again, something like this. Here's our line. A lot of these winds are more out of the south, but where we get those winds out of the southeast, that is where our tornado threat is going to be maximized. Looking at our HRRR run ahead of this line, this definitely gets maximized basically around 1Z, 8 p.m. Central here, kind of in northern Texas and southern Oklahoma. Looking at our day 2 outlook, tornado threat is, again, maximized in this region. And again, if you can imagine, this is where I identified the main tornado threat. I would still wouldn't be surprised if that's where we do see an upgrade, if we do see one in future outlooks. It just really depends on where our service wind vectors go. Let's do our NAM run, and I think this should have a very similar story here with our southeasterly winds primarily being over Oklahoma, right in this vicinity here. And that's where I would place personally the most intense tornado threat being right in this vicinity. I don't know if that would warrant a 10% upgrade, but if there's going to be tornadoes, it will probably be in that area. And due to these strong downdrafts, we can end up with pretty intense spin ups, especially if they are able to form along that line. Lots of vorticity along that line. And if 3 Cape is able to prevail, especially into the overnight hours like that, which I don't anticipate too much. See, it's definitely lacking here on our wrap run. But good, if it's able to continue itself even into those late hours, we could end up with a decent tornado threat. Let's just take a sounding out ahead to see what the environment would look like. And then after this, we're going to look at our Maryland setup real quickly as well. Surface winds, again, out of the south, or actually more out of the east, if anything. 3 Cape is definitely in play here. 225 joules per kilogram. I probably can't see that too great. 225 joules per kilogram down there. That is beyond adequate. Instability is pretty intense here. This looks a little bit convectively enhanced, just due to the moisture being so impressive. I wouldn't be surprised if the wrap had convection here, but if the moisture content is good and remains really solid along that line before the storms, you definitely could have those low LCLs and potentially pretty intense 3 Cape. So again, for this setup, you'll get these some storms coverage, probably a few discrete supercells ahead of the line, very quickly, just due to a lot of mass convergence in the northern panhandle. You end up with this very quick transition to a Boeing line segment. And just due to the amount of instability, just remember, what goes up, it has to come back down. And that's where we get those strong downdrafts coming from. D-Cape here, really underdoing D-Cape. I think 697 is pretty sad. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just quite a lot in the morning of, but downdraft should be very intense. I want to quickly look at our Maryland sector as well, just because we don't really get severe weather over here very often. And again, do remember we do have these storms that were ongoing. Not really anymore, but we did have them before. Let's see if we can see them earlier on today. Yeah, there was our big convective complex here, and this has since seemed to have produced a MCV. At least it's being forecast within the discussion here. If we look down here, multiple embedded MCVs will support at least shattered afternoon storms developing near the higher terrain and spreading east towards the coast. And again, we did also see some better winds here as well, possibly some short wave. Let's see, I'm just analyzing this real quick. Not the best low level jet, not really the best synoptic response, but due to the nature of our moisture here, pretty good moisture, dew points in the 70s up into Virginia. Probably a little bit unnormal, at least for the most part. The Atlantic is not super moist for the most part. It's not really warm enough to maintain a lot of that moisture, but this is pretty good moisture for this region. Temperatures it seems like they remain pretty low according to the wrap run, and instability ends up getting about into the 2000s here, right in that little region there. And I think you see this pretty clear triple point here. We just kind of take a sounding near that triple point. Most likely that will show what our area looks like, what our environment is conducive towards. And not a lot of deep layer shear, not much shear within a lot of the profile. We do have a little bit of that. I'm kind of looking for curvature there a little bit. Not very impressive curvature, but very moist at the surface. And one thing to note here, 3 Cape, again, being very high, 175 joules per kilogram with that sounding. 3 Cape along the region, lots of 3 Cape going on. Pretty rich 3 Cape as well. And if you imagine, again, we talk about this a lot in the channel, vorticity plus 3 Cape equals tornadoes. Not always, of course. Not a surefire way of looking at it, but when you have high amounts of 3 Cape and something to form the storms, like vorticity, something to stretch vorticity vertically with 3 Cape, then that's how you get those tornadoes from really any source of storms. So we'll see how this goes on with timing. And this is still a slight risk, so there's pretty conditional. But for the most part here, you can see pretty unstable air mass. Theta E is a measure of instability as well. You can see that pink really lights up in there. So we do have that secondary kind of risk here. And we'll see how that evolves into tomorrow as well. But the SPC does have that 2 out of 5. So I'll keep an eye on that. It's very interesting. H-triple-R. Let's see how this goes with reflectivity. A few little storms here, probably a few little maybe discrete spin-ups. And it doesn't seem like a big time tornado threat or anything like that. There's not too much synoptics to help this event, but the instability is there. The vorticity, for the most part, should be there as well. If any outflow from storm, and the lower level instability is certainly in place. Moisture content is good, but it's lacking a lot of that upper level support, and overall, just synoptic support as well. So again, if there's anything to take out of this setup, as a whole, both setups, wind is going to be our primary threat down there in Oklahoma and Texas. Lots of instability down there. Up over 5,000 joules per kilogram. Anything over 4,000 or 3,000 is just really strong updrafts. But 5,000 is kind of insane. So very explosive updrafts. They'll form quickly. They'll form strong downdrafts. Updrafts as well. Large hail. All hazards are at play down there, I think. Especially with Alliance storms, you never really know what's going to happen. So with that, again, if you're in these risk areas, please do keep an eye on your forecast. Read your AFD's area forecast discussions. A lot can change going into tomorrow. Again, I am recording this on the 7th, be applicable for the 8th. But just keep an eye out on your forecast. It's possible that our outlook has changed since then, but I don't anticipate a giant change. I would anticipate this moderate to still be out. It's possible there'll be a tornado risk upgrade. Maybe some downgrades over here, upgrades. We'll see how it evolves into tomorrow, and I can make a post. But with that, if you enjoyed this video, again, thank you for watching. Any comments, please let me know. I can always. So with that, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.